to be competitive with natural gas, you need a cost of low cost renewables. And the only way to really successfully do long term storage is either through hydrogen or compressed air. And I think hydrogen's much, much more efficient. But on top of that, what does the Trump administration care about? Energy dominance. If you want to dominate an energy, and Europe is moving to hydrogen and Asia is moving to hydrogen, my fear of the Trump administration, what it will do to hydrogen, is probably much less than many people around the world. Hydrogen is part of the U.S.'s future as far as a next net exporter. In fact, Europe is certainly a big, big target of ours.
Andy Marsh, the fearless captain of Plug Power, is steering the hydrogen ship through stormy seas and uncharted waters. Because apparently someone thought revolutionizing energy should be easy. He's got investors biting their nails, politicians scratching their heads, and competitors wondering if they missed the memo about the working weekends. But Andy, he's all in, building an empire, one fuel cell at a time. With partnerships spanning global giants and a roadmap that reads more like an action movie script, Andy's turned Plug Power into a household name if your house happens to be running on a powertrain he designed. His strategy: bold risks, relentless innovation, and just enough chaos to keep everyone guessing. Let's find out how he plans to keep the engine running while the rest of us are still looking for the keys. Andy, welcome.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whenever you're watching this.
What is your long term vision for Plug Power in the global energy transition?
Look, Plug has been the pioneer in creating the hydrogen economy. We really created the first market, putting fuel cells into forklift trucks. As I often like to say, not the sexiest market in the world, but one that we created out of nothing. And, you know, our goal is really clear. We want to be one of the dominant players in the hydrogen economy. If you look at it across industries, traditional players often disappear when there's a huge transition. And to us, to make this transition happen, you really have to make hydrogen cost effective. And when we really think through cost effective hydrogen, not only does that generate a revenue stream and a profit stream for our energy business, but also for our fuel cell business, because lower cost hydrogen will really allow us to exponentially grow what we do in fuel cells every day.
And what differentiates Plug Power from competitors?
Well, what I think it's really simple. Uh, First off, we do real things. I mean, we have over 70,000 forklift truck fuel cells in the world. We've built over 275 fueling stations. We have stationary products that are powering vehicles today. Uh, we have a history of working with top notch customers like Walmart, Amazon, and others around the world. And that really separates us. We have real products. I mean, we've deployed more PEM electrolyzers in Europe than anyone else. And look, and to do that, we have the global infrastructure to support it. From this great integration manufacturing facility here outside Albany, New York, almost 400,000 square feet, to our largest MEA manufacturing facility in the world in Rochester, New York, to our global integrators in Asia, in the Middle East, in Europe. And finally, it's our people. Without our greats who've, who've learned over the years how to make fuel cells, electrolyzers, liquefiers work for real customers, um, that really separates us from everybody. We're doing real things.
Recently, you received the good news from DOE. What's the plan with the 1.66 billion government loan guarantee?
Yeah. So that's really important milestone for Plug. This will really, we already run the largest liquid electrolyzer plant outside of China that I know of, where we're doing 15 tons a day in our facility in Georgia. Uh, the for next project is a project in Graham, Texas, which will run from a wind farm where the electricity cost is under 3 cents a kilowatt hour. So we'll be able to produce cost effective hydrogen. On top of that, and I think this is really important, we're beginning to build a financial model for building of hydrogen plants that starts to look a lot like solar and wind, where we now have debt providers, the DOE in this case, moving on to having equity players come in to support the program. And the DOE loan, the DOE program has launched many companies around the U.S., including Tesla, which received one of the biggest loans ever to really help launch that business. And that's really the start of what Plug's doing with this DOE loan.
What criteria will Plug Power use to choose the six hydrogen production facilities, and how will this affect local economies?
Oh, it's important. The first item is, and you can never forget this, it's really the cost of electricity.
Yeah.
And, to be competitive with natural gas, you need a cost of low cost renewables. And that's what we have in Texas. You couple that with the fact that it needs to be close to customers so that the transportation costs are minimized. And, from a jobs point of view, the Graham, Texas facility, they'll probably be in constructions for somewhere between 1.5 to 2 million hours of construction workers working to build that plant. And when they leave, there'll be about 75 permanent employees. That's a that's a good start. And Texas is just the start of really building out a broad-based hydrogen economy across the United States and ultimately the world.
Wow. How will Plug Power measure the success of this loan in terms of financial returns and contributions to decarbonization goals?
Yeah. So look, this plant's going to be around for about 50 years. Uh, that's it's not a short-term asset. And the
Yeah.
return will probably be from 7 to 8 years where all the capital paid back. Uh, but it does take a big step towards decarbonization. Just Texas, which is 45 tons a day versus liquid hydrogen, eliminates 175,000 tons a year of CO2. I know those numbers, it's tough to understand, but that's equivalent to
Yeah.
about 38,000 cars being taken off the road versus gray hydrogen. So two good two good measurements, and this is a long-term asset, which will just be churning out cash for 45 years.
How do you look at Plug's current valuation amid market skepticism about hydrogen viability?
Well, I think as when I think about the markets, you have to ask yourself, if you don't believe in renewables, one, you probably shouldn't be listening to this podcast, and two,
Yeah.
uh, two, if you believe in renewables, then you have to set back. What's the place of hydrogen? And I'll just pick one area where there's only one solution, but electrolyzers, hydrogen, and fuel cells. And that is as the grid becomes more and more renewable, have renewable solar and wind, you really need to have storage that's long term. And the only way to really successfully do long term storage is either through hydrogen or compressed air. And I think hydrogen's much, much more efficient. And so when you think about that, not only do you need electrolyzers which can generate that hydrogen, when possibly the cost of electricity is negative at night, when you think about Germany in May of last year, over 11% of the time, the grid cost was negative. That's pretty low cost hydrogen. And that
Yeah.
hydrogen could be used with products like plug stationary products that when the sun's not shining or the wind's not blowing, you can be putting electricity on the grid using hydrogen, which was generated for free with plug electrolyzers, powering the grid with our stationary offering.
When do you expect to achieve consistent profitability in
Yeah,
this market?
so- sure. So when we at our investor day in November, we actually laid out three major steps on the path to profitability. One was becoming positive, gross margin positive by the end of this year. By the end of 2026, we're looking to be EBITDA positive. And by the end of 2027, we'll be OI positive. That's our path. So when you think about that, the company starts really generating cash at the end of 26.
Wow. How will you make green hydrogen economically competitive with fossil fuels?
Yeah. So, as we talked before, it really comes down to what is what is the cost of electricity. Um,
Yeah.
and it's also what's the cost of natural gas. And globally, the cost, as the U.S. builds more and more LNG facilities, natural gas actually becomes a commodity like oil, which has a global price. So we see the cost of electricity going down. And if you average out a cost of electricity around 2 to 3 cents a kilowatt hour, where we are closely with Texas, and this is without government support, one
Mhm.
can see that hydrogen can be very, very competitive, green hydrogen versus fossil fuel hydrogen. And look, you know, it, Texas is going to be, really the metric that the world will measure how you produce cost-effective hydrogen lower than fossil fuels, and that's what we're aiming for. Lower than fossil fuels. When you look at Texas, largest liquid hydrogen plant in the world using electrolyzers, and combine that with a finance model that makes doing it over and over again possible.
Your optimism is contagious. I love it.
Thanks. Well, I can tell you why, because I could have
Yeah.
had this conversation with you back in 1988 when I was working on broadband. And the skeptics of broadband in the 80s were just as loud as the skeptics today about hydrogen. And, I was fortunate enough to ignore the skeptics and build a very, very successful company based on broadband. Today, products that I developed years ago probably power 50% of broadband in the United States. And the opportunity for hydrogen is much, much bigger, and we're going to do it.
Wow. Let's go a little bit to the politics. What plans do you have if political support for hydrogen initiatives diminishes related to the new administration?
Well, I think one has to step back and remind themselves that you know the last tax credit for fuel cells was in 2018, where fuel cells, not solar, not wind, received the tax credit from the U.S. government, and that was under President Trump and with a complete Republican Congress. And the same thing happened in 2006 where the initiatives for hydrogen really took off, and the Republicans controlled everything. And
Yeah.
look, hydrogen's liked more by oil and gas because what we do, and you can tell that what we do looks a lot more like oil and gas. It's one of the reasons about 30% of my employees come from the fossil fuel industry. But on top of that, what does the Trump administration care about? Energy dominance. If you want to dominate an energy, and Europe is moving to hydrogen and Asia is moving to hydrogen, you know, doesn't the United States want to be in the position to be one who leverages our great solar and wind resources to push hydrogen, ammonia, and methanol overseas and be an exporter? That's completely in line with the goals of the Trump administration. Second, like most countries around the world, the U.S. wants to create jobs and create jobs in their native country. This industry is creating jobs today. We went through how many construction hours is just for the one single plant in Graham, Texas. And finally, look, if we don't do it, then the Chinese have done remarkable work with electrolyzers. I have a lot of respect for the work they've done, but just like with AI, just like with solar, the U.S. does not want to end up being in place with solar and being in second place. And there's no reason, with all the money the U.S. government's invested in this technology, that we
Yeah.
can't be the dominant player. So that's one of the reasons my fear of the Trump administration, what it will do to hydrogen, is probably much less than many people around the world.
Yeah. I could say the same. I think I have literally the same feeling. Doesn't make sense to abolish everything that was done. But in the same context, how will you navigate political shifts and balancing fossil fuel priorities with hydrogen demand in Republican-led states while ensuring project viability amid funding cuts?
Yeah. So let's look. If you think about where money has gone, let's even take a further step back. Uh, Two of the three largest states that invest in renewable power are actually very red states. You don't get any redder than Texas, and you don't get too much redder than Florida. Uh, and both of them are leaders in renewable. They're two of the three largest renewable players in the United States outside California. So, you know, inherently, Republicans have supported these technologies. And when you start thinking about where have the jobs being created with renewables and with infrastructure over the last years, 85% of the investments actually have gone into red districts or Republican districts. Uh,
Yeah.
there is still a U.S. Congress, and U.S. congressmen care about jobs in their district, and over 65% of the jobs have been in red districts. When you really think about all that, and with the slim majority the Republicans hold in Congress, it's very hard to see that these jobs will disappear.
I could literally say that this is actually debunking the current media with very explanatory statements. So, how do you influence energy policies? And how do you address private investor concerns about funding hydrogen initiatives under these current political conditions?
Well, look, we have friends, plug like many companies, talk to politicians around the country. When you look at our
Yeah.
hydrogen plant in Georgia, it's in a very, very red district. Graham, Texas, where we're about to put 2 million hours of construction, almost 2 million hours of construction work in, is about as red as you can get. And these congressmen don't want to see this disappear. And we talk to them. We talk about what we can do to help their local communities. And look, it's the same around the world. If you're creating jobs, if you're doing something new that gives a community a differential advantage, that's that will convince politicians. As far as the private market goes, uh, they'll get there. I mean, I think that over the first 30 days here, the administration's doing, quite honestly, what every administration does, is sit back and tries to think through where they're spending the money, where it's going, what's going on. And I think private investors will see that projects involved with hydrogen and fuel cells will continue to be supported. And it's not only Plug, it's the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association in the United States, but probably just as important, most oil companies that are involved in projects here. And look, hydrogen is part of the U.S.'s future as far as a next net exporter, and we're not going to, as a nation, I don't believe the Trump administration is going to give up on that leadership.
Yeah. But let's look at it from the other angle. How will you
Okay.
manage how will you manage international supply chain complexities and your expansion plans given the tariffs, let's say?
Yeah. So first, the United States is not the only country looking in. I think when you look around the world, nationalistic sentiment is high, and people who want to do projects want to do them in their nation. And one of
Yeah.
the advantage Plug has is that we have built up if you take our electrolyzer projects, uh, you know, we have built up a international footprint to support deployments. You know, we we integrate electrolyzers in Germany and in Holland. We integrate electrolyzers in Vietnam. We integrate electrolyzers in Dubai. We have a global footprint to support integration. So, I think it's fair to say projects we do outside the United States will have to have very, very strong local content to support that nation's, or in Europe's case, that union's goals to bring more and more work. You know, a lot of this, so much, and let's not forget, it's people, the government spending money, the people going to use it, they're going to want to have jobs associated with the work, and Plug is committed to do that.
Let's go back to Plug again. How will partnerships
Okay.
with with companies like Amazon and Walmart benefit your market presence?
Oh, I think you can't underestimate it. So in the United States, and let's just take Walmart, for example, uh, the system we've built of providing fuel, of fueling stations, of powering their forklift fleet. Uh, that moves, those kind of opportunities move about 35% of the food in the United States for retail food. So, what most Americans are eating at their kitchen table probably touched a Plug product somewhere. And those strong partnerships not only highlight the viability of Plug long term. I mean, probably 75% of Walmart's network it uses Plug's products. Over 80 distribution centers of Amazon around the world use Plug's products. That's a strong testament to the fact that we're creating value by powering their equipment using hydrogen fuel cells. So these are partnerships that are deep. Uh, Walmart's been over a decade. Amazon's been almost over a decade. Uh, the relationships go well beyond the CEO and spreads throughout the organization. And quite honestly, we do a wonderful job making sure that at the holiday season and during peak, Amazon has packages at people's stores before Christmas Day starts.
And how can you multiply these across the world and convince other big companies to work with you? What's this
Oh,
competitive advantage?
yeah. I think you actually hit on a real good point. And I think it's one of the reasons Iberdrola and BP chose us for the electrolyzers. While with Galp, we're building the largest electrolyzer PEM plant that I know of in the world for their oil refinery business. And these companies chose us because of our experience, because of the capabilities of the people, and the fact that we can actually deliver and understand how to work with customers like we've done with Walmart and Amazon. So, over the next 3 or 4 years, we expect, Europe is certainly a big, big target of ours. You look at the BMW facility, we have over 600 fuel cells for forklift trucks in the Spartanburg facility in BMW. We're duplicating that in Germany, and you see that continuous growth of Plug. And to be successful in this industry, it's not only renewables, it's actually providing a product that makes their operation better. And that's really the focus of Plug. And there is going to come a point, and it's not going to be that far off, where there's a tipping point where the cost of hydrogen from electrolyzers beat natural gas, just like solar electricity wins today. As we drive down the cost and the cost of electricity, especially negative electricity, becomes more prevalent, that's going to grow our fuel cell business. And you kind of see, as Sanjay Shrestha, our president, says, you end up with this flywheel effect where we continue to grow both markets rapidly.
I'm going off the script here, but I'm very interested
Okay.
to hear. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on hydrogen in mobility, especially in cars.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
I think that's I think that's probably longer out. Now, if I was going to do a roadmap for hydrogen, uh, the first opportunities are really in substitutions, where
Yeah.
today people use gray hydrogen and you substitute green hydrogen. Then I think that you need to have, just like they did with LNG and buses, you need to have closed networks where, you know, you have one or two hydrogen fueling stations that support multiple vehicles. And I think for trucking, that means point to point trucking uh, with a few fueling stations along the way. So the cost of the fueling stations doesn't overwhelm the cost of doing the deployments. As you do more and more hydrogen for things which are substitute that's green, it makes it a lot easier to provide that hydrogen cost effectively. Ultimately, I think cars, especially hybrid cars, probably start making sense. I'm going to call it somewhere around 2035. Uh, when you start thinking about, here in the United States, as a lot of your listeners know, we probably have more natural disasters than you see in Europe. Just think if you were leaving the California forest fires and you're driving electric vehicles and you had to drive any distance, would you really feel comfortable driving a pure EV? I think you really need hybrid solutions. So, and I think
Yeah.
the ideal solution is really long term for passenger cars, hydrogen and batteries combined so that people get the range, people have a dependable, dependable vehicles, and fueling stations become more ubiquitous in regions.
Yeah. I I really think that industry went too fast into hyping this, and I like your approach much more.
I can tell you industry doesn't always listen to me. Yeah, probably in 2010, 2011, I gave a speech in California and I almost got booed off the stage when I told them that I didn't think they were going about it in a fashion that could make it competitive. So, but they also can point out a lot of times I was wrong. So I just highlight the times I was right.
Fair enough. So, how do you address scalability challenges in electrolyzer manufacturing?
Yeah, yeah, it's an important one. So, because we've built things for years, and we have very good understanding of the learning curves for fuel cells and electrolyzers. And we've been on about a 25% learning curve. which means every time you double the number of units in the field, our costs have gone down by 25%. And that's really due to a combination of factors. Um, it's due to the fact that you know, we did, as you learn, as you build more, you learn to simplify the design. And I know our next generation of electrolyzer products will be much simpler than what I'll call our second generation today. You learn how to in manufacturing. We've dramatically this year are in the process of cutting the costs of our electrolyzer stacks by 30-40%. So you go down these learning curves that are really a combination of design simplification, manufacturing, process improvements, and finally, suppliers, as markets become bigger, are more willing to provide competitive pricing. And you really need to have all three elements to be successful.
What's the most uncommon use of your products that you
Oh,
know about?
that's a good question. So if you go to Aruba, there's a tram running around that actually uses the same that for tours that actually uses the same fuel cells that are used in forklift trucks. And I know that I've had employees visit Aruba and they've rode on the tram that takes people around the island to show them all the exciting spots.
Let's go back a little bit to the innovation. What's actually cooking behind the closed doors?
Yeah. So I think that one of the key items is, like everyone, we have lots of work going on reducing precious metals in our products. And over the next, and a lot, if you look at the electrolyzer stack, probably more than 20-25% of the cost is really tied to precious metals. And our goal is that by 2030, we really cut that down by at least 75%. And a lot of good work our scientists are doing in that area. If you go to our factories, there's lots of work on, especially when it comes to our stack manufacturing, how to really drive a much higher level of automation, which not only reduces costs on a per unit basis, but ultimately improves the quality because you get better and better repeatability.
And in this sense, is there a scientific collaboration?
Oh, we have lots of science. So Plug has, believe it or not, collaborates with 31 universities across the United States.
Wow.
Um, Everything from AI to electrolyzers, stacks to, you know, you know, you know, other sort, fuel cell performance, all the, compressors, which don't have a lot, it's not often highlighted, but compressors are really important to projects on hydrogen leakage and the impact and
Yeah.
how to keep it down. So we have some great collaborations, and Tim Cortez, our CTO, really drives that throughout the company.
Where do we need the biggest innovations when we are talking about hydrogen? Is it storage, transport, production?
And I wouldn't call it in really good question. Um, I believe that the biggest challenge 5 years from now for the hydrogen industry will be more associated with the logistics of moving hydrogen. And I
Yeah.
think this is where I think Europe has taken a real leadership position. You really need more hydrogen pipelines because the cost of moving hydrogen by pipelines, say, versus gas, is probably 1/20th. And after the renewable cost comes down and you really see an even playing field with natural gas, the next question is how you move it. And like natural gas, you really need to move hydrogen pipeline with pipelines. That's why the work going on in Denmark to bring, low cost hydrogen from wind into Central Europe, as well as the work going on in places like Finland to build pipelines into Central Europe. That's really what's need. That will be what's needed to really make sure hydrogen is cost effective and nothing else. You get hydrogen cost effective. The cost of
Yeah.
fuel cells, like any electromechanical device, will naturally come down just with deployments. But it's hydrogen and that everyday cost. And that's really where the focus and innovation is required. And it's really not innovation, it's really deployments. And that's really what we need more of.
We're currently witnessing a transformation of this market, and I would like to know what are the top risks in upcoming 5 years that you see, and how will you mitigate them?
Well, there's always risk.
Yeah.
And I guess you probably can tell from our discussion, I always think about opportunities first. And the
Yeah.
opportunities to substitute uh, gray hydrogen from natural gas to green hydrogen today is big. And I think, our
Yes.
commitment in this industry beyond plug needs to make sure that we, especially for these initial deployments, one of the reasons Tesla was successful beyond the big DOE loan was the fact that they initially over-serviced their customers. And us in the industry, as we do these initial deployments, need to make sure our products work as well as, if you're buying a stationary product, it needs to be as good as a natural gas generator. Uh, if you're buying an electrolyzer, it needs to be as good as a reformer. These customers need to have performance that they're used to for real life applications. It's the experience Plug has had, but it's really important not only Plug, but all industry players know that our performance as an industry will really dictate the success of this industry long term.
Where do you see Plug in 5 years, and what's the plan for expansion?
Oh, you know, I see that you're having me on the podcast, and I'm talking to you about how hydrogen has succeeded in becoming part of the real energy growth with real applications around the world. Plug will have a much larger footprint in Europe, have a much larger footprint in Australia, be doing more deployments in South Korea. Uh, Plug will be everywhere. And when people talk about the creation of the hydrogen economy and how this is going to be 15 to 20% of world energy by 2050, the first name that'll come to their mind will be Plug.
That's a
We're
really
in this, we're
visionary.
in this win.
That's really visionary answer, and I think you have a track record to prove it. Definitely.
Yeah. And there's about 3,000 other people here who have had the track record to prove it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Andy, thank you so much for being my guest today. This was an honor.
I I I really enjoyed it, and looking forward to watching other of your podcasts to listen to other folks from the industry. So thanks a lot.
I'll make sure you have them. Thank you.
Looking to amplify your brand in the hydrogen energy sector? Welcome to H2 Energy News, your go-to platform for impactful industry insights. Every month, we connect with over 80,000 visitors and generate more than 251,000 page views. Our reach is unmatched with over 1.2 million web impressions and a loyal social media following of 9,000 plus. Our newsletter reaches 77,000 plus subscribers, decision makers, industry leaders, and innovators. Want to target specific markets? Our geo-targeting capabilities cover Europe, the United States, and the MENA region. We reach key stakeholders, 27% senior executives, 32% directors, and 20% owners and partners. H2. Energy News isn't just a news platform, it's where the hydrogen energy community converges to shape the future. Join us and let's make an impact together. Visit energynews.biz and take your brand to the next level.